Hello, lovely people. Welcome to CMO Therapy, a podcast that's hopefully going to give you or help you navigate your way through your marketing journey. Because let me tell you, I get it. Being a marketing leader is no walk in the park. Each episode, we're going to deep dive headfirst into the world of B2B marketing, where uncertainty, tight budgets, and fierce competition are just the beginning of the roller coaster ride. But guess what? You're not alone in this journey. Why go solo when you can tap into a powerhouse of insights from some of the most awesome marketing leaders in the game? And look, the title might include the word therapy, but we're not just talking about challenges here. We're tackling them head on. So join us as we deep dive into the nitty gritty, share war stories, and unlock secret strategies. And get ready for no holds barred conversations, because sometimes I have no filter. So if you're a marketing chief marketing officer, a marketing lead, or someone just looking to up their marketing game, then you're in the right place. And I'm so glad you're here with us today. So today I have a very special guest with me. It's the very awesome Sumeet. Sumeet, would you mind giving an introduction?
Absolutely. Hi, Lucy. So I'm Sumeet Vermani. I'm a long-time marketeer. I've worked in many industries, including media, SaaS, fintech, and financial services. And I now have a kind of fractional CMO consulting business. And so I work with a range of companies, from kind of small startups who are just getting going, scale-ups, and large enterprises, both in an advisory capacity as well as getting my hands dirty and being a bit more in the weeds. So I'm happy to be here, and thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. So, Sumeet, we had a little bit of a conversation about what we were going to talk about today. And one of, I know your favorite topics, where you speak a lot about at events, is AI. And it's one of the most kind of frequent questions, I think, that you probably hear from our peers. I know I certainly do, which is kind of, help, my CEO says that we should be doing AI. What does this mean? What should I be doing? Where do I start? So that's what I thought we could have a little bit of a conversation about today. So let's kick this off with kind of one big, I suppose, the big question, which is, when we talk about AI in marketing specifically, like
Yeah.
what pops into your head? Like what's the first thing you think about when you think about AI and marketing?
Oh no. Not this question again. No, it fills me with optimism. It fills me with dread in equal measure, and I think that's probably something that most senior marketing leaders feel. Right? I think there's so much opportunity ahead, but it's like, where do you get started? It's so big. There's so many different avenues, so many different, I guess, interpretations for what that means. And I'm here to say it's okay. I can reassure you, we've been on these journeys before. I was there in the early days of digital marketing, when everyone, thought it was a pie in the sky dream. I was there at the early days of mobile, when no one really wanted to do anything with an app. I thought, what is this Apple iPhone thing? No one wanted to do anything at social. I thought it was it was ridiculous. And the wave that happens is, there are early adopters, people who are really sort of interested and get on the bandwagon, a load of people who become naysayers and think, oh, it's a load of rubbish, we've just got to focus on the day to day. You then suddenly, it sort of bubbles to the surface of kind of the leadership team, and then kind of suddenly the CEO says, what are you doing with social? What are we doing with our social media? What are we doing with digital marketing? And now we're at, what are we doing with AI? So, I'm here to reassure you that we've been on many of these journeys, like any digital transformation, we're in a point where we're kind of just figuring it out. No one really knows, at the moment, what it could net out to be, but there is a huge amount out there, and hopefully I can help to sort of steer you through some of the challenging waters that the conversation is bringing.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. And I think this is it's the thing, isn't it? We always know that there's the technology out there.
Yeah.
But then it's the kind of, where do you start? The chicken and the egg thing. Do you start with the technology that can do all these really wonderful things for you? Or do you start with the, kind of, what problem am I looking to solve? It's just
Yeah, I
our
think
problem
that.
list is always like that, right? Like,
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are kind of running to this idea that, oh look, I can get AI to upweight all of my content marketing, or all my social media posts, and we're looking at kind of how can we scale, and sometimes we forget to kind of to stop, pause, and just really understand what is it we're trying to solve for. Are we looking at sort of core marketing principles and looking at augmenting them with potentially with AI? If we don't have the right data, if we don't have the right sort of core proposition, if we don't have the right ICP, it doesn't really matter what sort of AI technology you use or sort of how you go to market using a kind of AI solution if you don't have the basics in place. And I think a lot of the conversation is very much focused at that end execution, and we're all rushing towards it. And ultimately, if we all do that, we're all going to be pulling from the same AI tools for the same sort of insight that's going to provide our targeting and our kind of, the content that we're going to create. And where do we then stand out from the crowd? And so that's an area that I spend a lot of time working with marketeers on to really pause and stop and think more sort of strategically about how can we use AI in a constructive way, that is going to serve us for the long term and not just the short term.
so I love that. So that's kind of the best place to start then. Like going back to that question that we asked at the start of like my CEO says, where can we use AI? Then your advice would be that just kind of pause, take a step back, not jump into the looking for the AI solutions, but yeah, what problem am I trying to solve then?
Yeah, and I think the difference between sort of looking at sort of AI in the realm versus a kind of social media or digital marketing is that it is very much on the radar of senior leadership, not just in marketing, but across the business. And the implications for using sort of any AI technology, touch much more closely the CIO, the CHRO, the chief legal officer. There are huge implications when it comes to data, when it comes to regulation, when it comes to copyright, when it comes to all manner of things. And so it's going to be more challenging for us to go off and do our own thing without it being fully integrated into the business. And I would play back to the CEO to understand what's our company strategy when it comes to AI, and really look to understand how can I play a part in driving that. If you become an expert sort of in all things AI from a marketing standpoint, you can really position yourself to be, a leader for that within your business, because marketing, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, is at the forefront of where you're seeing a lot of the quick executional opportunity. And so actually, if you're able to put the right things in place, you can feed that learning back into the business and actually start to understand what's our company AI strategy and how can marketing help to drive that, as opposed to we're doing this AI thing in marketing over here, and then the CIO suddenly loses their their marbles, because you've kind of gone and bought a technology, or you're doing something that is completely out of sync with what they're thinking.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really good example, actually. Yeah. So I think the first question would be from the kind of, CIO or whatever would be, okay, well, you want to use this solution. Well, exactly. Like, what's it for? What data are you going to be, like, are we storing? What data is going to be obviously out there and shared? And yeah, to answer all of those questions, you need to know, first of all, kind of what you're using it for or what the objective is that you're trying to achieve. So
Yeah, and
thinking
if you
about,
use a chat GPT, and you're using a non-enterprise version, everything that you're feeding in is going into chat GPT's model, and so you're potentially feeding in proprietary company data, and then that's
so
out in the ether, and kind of anyone can learn from that. So there are lots of kind of things like that I'm particularly wary of, when I talk to marketeers.
So you, oh, I'd love to come back to that actually
Mm.
there. But like you mentioned a second ago about different areas like kind of like digital or content. You mentioned about content generation. Like where have you seen some really good applications of AI technology? But let's take
Mm.
it down a level. Like what's being automated? What tech is being used?
So look, I'm gonna use a really different example that I think most people will have heard, actually, which is, I'm I was at a conference, and I go to a lot of conferences, as Lucy knows, and I've been particularly kind of early in the AI space for the last couple of years. But something that the agency WPP are doing is that they have essentially built AI for customer insight. So where you would have done market research with panels, and would have done interviews and panels on in person or on the phone or digitally, they've started to create personas that are chatbots. So essentially, they are training a persona that might be 18 to 24, female from the north of England, that has X, Y, and Z interest and comes from this particular ethnic background. And they're building a whole suite of personas and essentially training them and then using that to test creative. So they A/B test creative against all these personas without ever having to kind of go to market and spend money in a way that they would have done otherwise, when you would have done sort of full qual and quant research and analysis. And so there's a really different example of kind of looking at understanding how can we better understand our customers before we even get to market, and can we use AI tools, if fed with the right information, the right data, to better improve the output of our marketing. So rather than kind of going, okay, let's just focus on the output, let's think about how are we driving our go to market from a kind of fundamental standpoint, and using AI for that.
Goodness, I love that. And it's really clever, actually. I never thought about because automatically I think with kind of the AI technology, and I'm positive that's where kind of the CEO's question of like, where can we be using AI would come from. It's more of sort of an output, but almost dividing it into kind of the input versus output. I think that's really clever. I really like that. Oh, give me another one. I want another one.
So I think there's numerous examples that I could pull on from the likes of, I guess, a lot of kind of media and production companies who are using AI to do global campaigns. So previously we would have done transcreation, and I will say transcreation over localization, because transcreation is, you're not just sort of trying to localize the language, you need to localize the context of the language. So maybe you need to have images that are the Eiffel Tower in Paris versus the Berlin versus Berlin Wall maybe in Berlin, or Big Ben in London. And so that I've done that many times. I've did that sort of semantic. I built a whole kind of global integrated marketing function, and doing the transcreation globally was timely, costly, and you had to have agencies that had the ability to scale that across the globe. You can sort of take that quite chunky, timely, costly process out by using sort of AI technology to scale and localize your content for global campaigns. And lots of movie studios are doing that for launching sort of their movies. I saw that sort of some of the big shopping, so Amazon have done that quite successfully for many years. So there's an example there with where you're looking at from the execution standpoint, where you're looking at how can we do that both from an imagery standpoint, from a kind of written language standpoint, and even for video. There's lots sort of kind of transcreation tools for kind of where someone can speak in a language that they don't otherwise. So I could feel myself. Reid Hoffman did Read AI, and he basically did an interview where he fed all of the kind of books that he's written and all his speeches into an AI sort of bot, and it created a visual representation of him, and he had an interview conversation with them. So he got interviewed by the AI, and it sounded exactly like him, and it pretty much spoke like him based on everything it had been fed. So you could scale yourself.
This is amazing. This is see, I love this example actually from a not automation, like a time saving point of view. So you know what it's like when you're writing for the CEO and the CFO, and you're trying to do it in their tone, and it's okay, over time you do learn. But yeah, being able to do that a little bit quicker and smarter with AI, that would be so much easier.
And I think the third example I'll give, Lucy, is I think it's one that's pretty close to a lot of people's hearts when it comes to B2B, is sales and sales coaching. So
Mhm.
with the latest models, with sort of ChatGPT and others, where you can actually have essentially like a voice assistant interface, is that you're able to start to create chatbots that can act as sales coaches. And so if you feed it with the right information, it can start to act as a conduit for a manager, a sales manager, to work with an SDR or work with a kind of field sales associate. And they get that one-to-one personalized sales coaching with all of the key information that they need from the organization. And again, that's, I think, something that's becoming more commonplace already. But with that voice interface, it becomes a very natural language interaction. And you can do that with a peer in your company. But a peer in your company is normally doing it because they kind of have to, or they're trying to carve out time, and they don't probably don't want to be as honest with you as you'd like. And so this is a real sort of step up, and where you may be able to improve the performance of your commercial go-to-market teams using an AI.
Yeah. And if you coupled that with your first example with the personas as well, can you imagine
Yeah,
almost like the persona giving sort of information or giving feedback to them? Well, actually, you
exactly
could
right.
sell to me in a better way if you would have put it like this, that sort of thing.
Yeah, but then I think on the flip side of that, some of the things that I look at is, where are the challenges that come with this, right? And if we're all using these tools, how do we kind of stand out? How do we not get lost? A really good example is a friend of mine he works in sales for a technology company, and there's a lot of these tools that were like Otter AI and others, where you can record the call and the transcription of the call with a client, and then a sales manager or commercial leader can understand sort of how their team's performing based on a scoring system that the AI produces. And he actually said to me that what he's found himself doing is he's gaming for the score, because actually if he says certain words in the conversation, it will improve the score that goes back. And it becomes about, how do I perform internally on that score, versus as much as the conversation I'm having with the client or with a potential prospect. Because if the score is saying I have to hit 70 as a number, and if I know that I don't say certain words, or if I don't say certain sentences, I'm going to perform under that, I'm going to be looked at more closely. And so where do you start to have the authentic conversations? And equally, if you're the customer, how much do you want to have a conversation where it's being recorded and transcribed? How many people have bought pieces of software technology where they've had an off offline conversation where they could really give you the kind of the narrative of what's happening internally and whatnot? And does it start to change behavior on both sides? And actually, does face to face become even more important?
Reminds me of like the old sort of SEO days where you were writing for SEO because you were
Yeah.
trying to game. And yeah, that's really interesting. It's a good point. On the recording, that's an interesting one actually, because I've had this recently. Like I'm in the last few companies I've been at, we've used the call recording software, which
Mm.
for marketing is just like gold. I love it.
Yeah.
Um, but I am seeing like more and more that people are kind of more accepting now of the kind of the call recordings. So it's been really interesting over the years, kind of watching the evolution of it and how relaxed people are now. Whereas like
Yeah.
back in the day, they were a bit kind of, I'm being recorded, it's a bit stiff. Whereas now sometimes you get people and they just, they're quite
Yeah.
happy. They just
Forget it's
let it all
there.
out. Yeah, exactly. And then obviously you can analyze all of that, which is fantastic. So
Which is amazing. But I think there will be a point where companies become very strict about the conversations they allow to be recorded in that way, because
mm,
essentially you're sharing proprietary information in a call, in a commercial call, and then it's being recorded for your AI, Lucy, that's going to be trained internally for you. And what are the realms of where that data sits, where the privacy piece sits, where the regulation piece sits? So I do wonder whether with this incarnation, whether there'll be, I don't know if there'll be a reckoning around it or there'll be an agreement that changes. I don't know, but it's just something I'm becoming increasingly aware of.
But you made the point right at the start about understanding the company strategy, and this is where this comes in, right? This is why it's
Yeah.
so important then, isn't it? Because we can go down the path of thinking, well, all of these technologies are going to help us. Well, of course they're all going to help us. Like they're all really great. And if we had a unlimited, pot of gold at the end of the rainbow or whatever,
We
we don't
wouldn't be doing this.
no, we wouldn't be doing this
Like,
exactly. We'd be on an island somewhere. But yeah, like understanding that company, what the company approach is, and what their risk appetite is for AI technology, I think is the right place to start. I see what you mean now. I want to hear some juicy details. Like, tell me where you've heard it go wrong. What should we avoid?
you know what? I haven't heard enough of the things, and I'm imagining a lot of those are getting buried in places no one wants to be that person.
Yeah.
I think I've seen some use cases where customer service organisations have deployed AI chatbots and it's gone a little bit wrong, and I think that's a very common occurrence. And
I
again,
heard one bank go a bit sweary.
yeah. I think one bank, and there was a utility that did it as well. And I think so. There are areas where, and again, that comes down to people rushing to execute something and not really thinking it through too much, and then it going a bit wrong. And I think with this rush, I fear there's going to be more of those. I think I did predict in December that this would be the year where something would go wrong, and I'm still waiting for my prediction to come true.
We've got time. We've got time.
Yeah, but I think honestly, I don't think there are enough real life examples yet. Right? I think people are dipping their toe in the water. They're trying a few things that are low risk, high value, but there's not enough out there, and there's a lot of reticence more than the narrative, particularly with large enterprises and even kind of regulated industries, for us to be doing stuff. A lot of CIOs are very nervous because the governance piece is much more challenging than I think we would like it to be.
I think for that reason though, that's normally the kind of the bad stories are driven by a regulatory breach or something like that, aren't they? So because we don't have full sense of the governance around it, I think that's probably why we're not seeing the little horror stories as of yet. Like, can you think about GDPR, for instance? Obviously, once that happened, then you're hearing about all of these big data because they have to report the data breach. So
I think there's been a lot more because we've had sort of elections and whatnot, so misinformation, that side of things, and kind of fake videos using AI, that's becoming much more prominent. And I think we're seeing it in that context, and I'd say that that's one area that, again, I think we all have to be mindful of, is brand protection. It's like someone could very easily go out and create something that looks, feels, sounds like the brand and the company that we work for, and how are we protecting for that, or how are we protected from that? And that is yet to play out. I've not seen anything go really, really wrong yet, touch wood, but that's an area that I would be concerned about if I was in a CMO role.
So look, right, I feel like a little bit of a dinosaur when it comes to this. I know I'm not a dinosaur, I'm not ancient.
No, you're not at all.
I do feel a little bit of a dinosaur because I am quite sort of hesitant about it, but except where there is a kind of a for selfish reasons, where it's kind of bringing a benefit, I suppose, to me. So I will use ChatGPT to kind of help if I'm looking for a bit of a better title for a webinar, or something like that. So this kind of leads me on to my next question then, or it's always the big question when it comes to AI, about AI replacing, humans, and humans losing their jobs. Is marketing going to be completely AI driven? But where do you see that, as we are today, like now, where do you see that nice balance between human and AI?
Look, I think it's long been said, AI won't replace your job, but look, I'm going to cut through that. A lot of things in the last few weeks have been launched. Salesforce have done a huge amount on this. HubSpot, I've been speaking about it for probably the last 9 months, around AI agents and this idea of kind of a chatbot agent that can do sort of SDR work, that can do sort of campaign deployment in digital marketing, that can do customer service and whatnot. And they talk a lot in the marketing around augmenting your marketing or augmenting your team. We have to be really honest that is going to replace, portions of what we do. So if there are digital marketers whose focus is just paid campaigns, there's an element of that will be highly automated in the future, and you may not need as many people to do that. But you will still need someone who has deep expertise in that area to be able to manage, and work alongside or work in harmony with a kind of an AI tool. And so I think my prediction would be that there will be marketing teams, marketing teams of humans. Those teams may be smaller than they have been in the past, because you may be able to utilize more technology where you would have otherwise needed a certain number of people. We have to be really careful about how we talk about this internally and in our industry, about saying that there is this narrative that everything in marketing can just be deployed to an AI. And if leaders hear that, or they have that perception, that's a real risk. And we have to shift that perception before it becomes too embedded, because those things don't work without sort of the knowledge, experience, and fundamentals of marketing expertise. You need to have a level of that in order to direct the technology and to have the right outcomes. And marketing fundamentals are still going to be there, but how we go to market, what customer expectations are, how we interface internally, the data, the insight that we can use is going to get supercharged. And that is all going to change, but we're still going to need people. That's not going away, but we have to get real and say that there are likely to be an evolution in kind of the structure and makeup of marketing teams.
That selfish hat on like I do. What can it do for me?
Exactly right. And I think you can demonstrate proven results pretty quickly, but it's not going to mean that you can't get investment. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't, because these things cost money as well, right? They're not free.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And like with any piece of technology, AI or not, you've got to prove the ROI from it. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
What I'm kind of most excited about actually is the kind of how it sort of fosters a lot more collaboration, it feels like. So a lot of the kind of the AI tools that I've come across that we've started to use, without naming any ones in particular, but they are bringing kind of departments together. So whether it be a little bit more of kind of sales and marketing, or the whole marketing thing, or product, or whatever, like that personas training model that you described earlier on, to help with the product, or for the collaboration product and marketing. That's fantastic. But yeah, that kind of excites me the most, because then that is empowering people, and it's empowering people to work together.
Exactly. And I think if deployed correctly, it could also mean that you can get hold of information much more easily. So you can upskill in product knowledge or commercial knowledge, and that can be democratized across an organization. So you're not, as a marketing leader, you're not necessarily waiting for an analyst in a kind of commercial team to give you information to provide you with what you need to can be a bit of a blockage. It might be actually, if deployed correctly, you could go and get that information and be accessible to anyone and everyone, so that we can then go and execute on it quickly and at speed. So there is that, I think, that collaboration piece and democratization and flattening of hierarchies is a real huge opportunity.
So I think you've already answered this question, but just to kind of sum it up, I suppose. But what if we had a marketing leader that was coming to you and saying, kind of, help, where do I start? What would be those? What's the first 1, 2, 3 steps that you would say to go through?
Yeah, so look, the first thing would be, okay, let's look at what you currently do and what your current setup is. Like I would say purely from a kind of data standpoint, from a digital standpoint, where are you at? Let's benchmark you there first and foremost, both as a marketing function and then as a company. right? Because then there's two kind of areas that kind of need to interlock when it comes to this. The second is then who in your team and who in your company is already using tools, whether they're, maybe they're doing it in their own time, or they've already kind of jumped on these things and they're really excited. Who are the kind of natural advocates, early adopters? And then the third would be like, how can you train yourself and get your teams trained into just trying some things? Because right now we're in a very experimental phase, and it's like, well, as a leader, if you can demonstrate competency and a level of IQ when it comes to AI, you're going to create a psychological safety for your team to try. Because there'll be a number of people who want to try and think, yeah, I'm going to go ahead, and there's going to be a number of people who are really kind of fearful of it or unsure what to do. And so you need to be kind of seen to be trying it, making mistakes, giving it a go in your everyday to showcase that it's okay. And I would say taking those 3 initial steps is a really sure way to kind of get you on the journey. And then it's building out kind of what that strategic framework looks like. What does that look like? But really, these things are so accessible. There's no harm in trying.
So test and learn, Sumeet. Test and learn. It's my
test and learn.
Favorite phrase. I don't go a day without saying it.
That's it, right? And there's I think the thing is, there's so much out there. It's so. Look, I'm someone who's really deep into it, and I find it overwhelming. So don't worry. Like, there are loads of people trying lots of things, and it's okay. I think it's okay. Right? It's okay not to know.
I have a favorite phrase that my teams just always, they hear it. It's another one of my maybe daily phrases. But when I'm asked by my team about a new piece of software or something, a new tool that they want to implement, my answer back is, have you broken what you've got first? So it might even be as simple as, like, I'm pulling some information together in a spreadsheet, but have you broken that first? If you're telling me actually that there's a tool, like the moment filling all these numbers in a spreadsheet is taking you 3 days to do, once a month, whereas with this tool it would be 5 minutes, then that's great. You have broken it, but you've got to show that you've broken it first. And I think that's the kind of the first thing, the answer back to the team or the CEO, whatever, when they say, where are you implementing AI? It's like, well, actually, don't start with the tech. Think about what you need to break first to kind of.
And you're right. Look at what you've already got. I always say to people, it's like, well, if you've already got a Salesforce or a HubSpot or a sort of, Microsoft kind of CRM system, those companies are already building in an AI functionality left, right, and center, and they're looking for people to be the guinea pigs. Yep. Right, because they need case studies.
Well, they're like
LinkedIn. So there's lots of stuff within existing stuff. It's not all ChatGPT and the new things. There is a lot that's being embedded in existing. And if you've got an existing relationship and technology you're using, can you sweat that a little bit more?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Oh, that's a good one. You're full of gems, Sumeet. Well, we've come up to time. Thank you so much. As always, our conversations could go on for hours. And so thank you so much. There is one more question though for you. It's a bit of a surprise. I'm sorry to spring this on you. So what I do is I go out to my LinkedIn network and I always ask for one question that they would ask the next podcast guest that I've got on the podcast. So it's a bit of a random one, not related to the topic. Yeah. You ready for it?
I'm ready.
This one is, if you was building a new marketing team, who would be your first hire, or what role would be your first hire?
Ooh, that's a really good one. So I'll give you the kind of the standard answer, which would be, obviously I would assess the company and I would look at what the team structure looks like and whatnot. But generally it's hiring my number 2. So someone who is senior enough that they can pick up some of the day-to-day as a CMO or as a senior leader. My role not only is focused on the marketing and kind of what we're doing from a marketing output standpoint, but it's also operating at an exec leadership level. And so, I can't be doing all the kind of managing of the marketing every day without kind of compromising that exec leadership piece. So if I have a really strong sort of number two who can work in sync with me, who can take on some of that, is able to kind of grow into a more senior leader over time, that's generally the hire that I would try and make first, because that also helps me to be, unlocked to be a better leader overall for the business.
It's an awesome answer. I love that. That was not expected.
I wasn't expecting the question, so it's like so everyone got a surprise.
Yeah, no. Or normally you would get the kind of, more like a generalist, or, that sort of thing, like just some, or maybe like maybe like a kind of an intern or something, someone that can really sort of get their hands dirty or whatever. But that's I love that. Thank you so much. See, it's why I love these conversations. Anyway, that's all we've got time for today. So thank you very, very much. And thank you to everyone for listening.
Thanks, Lucy.